The desert didn't whisper that morning. It screamed. Colt Avery rode to the furnace wind, his hat pulled low, his throat dry as splintered wood. The year was 1870, and the Arizona plains were more death than land. His horse, a worn bay named Juniper, stumbled with each step, breath rasping from the heat. Colt had been riding since dawn, heading back from a failed cattle sale in Yuma. His pockets were empty again. Just another loss in a long list he'd stopped counting. The sun burned high when he first heard it, a sound so faint it nearly blended with the hiss of the wind. At first, he thought it was a squeal of some dying animal, but it came again thin, human, desperate. A baby's cry. Colt froze in the saddle. "Hell," he muttered, scanning the endless waves of sand. The sound came from the North Ridge, near a patch of dry mesquite. He hesitated. In the desert, cries could mean traps. Men used them, knowing mercy got men killed faster than bullets. Still, something in that cry cut deeper than fear. He nudged Juniper forward. The air shimmered with heat, the horizon twisting. Sweat slid down his spine. As he neared the ridge, he saw a shape half buried in the sand. A bundle of cloth, small as a saddlebag. A buzz of flies hung over it. Colt's breath caught. He dismounted, boots sinking into the soft ground. The cloth moved. A weak cry broke through again. He knelt, pulling back the edge of a sun-bleached shawl. A baby, no older than a few months. Skin cracked, lips white, a tuft of black hair plastered to its forehead. "God Almighty," Colt whispered. His hands trembled. He looked around. No tracks close by except one set of boots heading west and disappearing in the dust. A broken canteen lay nearby, the cork gone. He lifted it, dry. The baby coughed, a small, rasping sound that hit him like a bullet. Colt's chest tightened. He hadn't held a living soul that small since the day his wife died birthing their son. A son who hadn't lived past a minute. The memory clawed at him. He stood fast, shaking his head. "Ain't my business," he said to the wind. "Ain't my damn business." He turned back to his horse. Then came a distant gunshot, sharp, echoing from the west. Colt froze, one hand on his holster. Another shot followed, fainter, farther. Whoever left that child might still be out there, or whoever killed them. He looked down again. The baby's chest rose shallow, then stilled too long. Colt cursed low, scooped the tiny body into his arms, and turned toward Juniper. "You picked the wrong fool," he muttered, mounting up. "But I ain't leaving you here." He kicked his horse hard, turning east toward his cabin miles away. Behind him, the desert wind swallowed every trace of his decision. The first mile felt like riding through fire. The heat pressed down until the world swam in waves. Colt wrapped the baby in his coat, holding it against his chest. The child's breath fluttered weakly. Each time it stopped, Colt muttered rough prayers under his breath. Sand hissed through the air like a living thing. The wind picked up, turning from whisper to roar. A dust storm was building. The horizon blurred. Juniper fought forward, ears pinned flat. Colt couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The sand scraped his skin raw, filled his mouth, his eyes. He leaned low over the saddle, shielding the baby. "Just hold on," he said, voice breaking. "You hear me, little one? You hold on." The storm hit full force, sand spinning in a furious dance. The world disappeared into orange haze. The horse stumbled, cried out. Colt slid down, pulling the reins, guiding them through by instinct. He moved by memory now. He'd ridden this land enough to know the shape of the ridges, even blind. A flash of lightning cut the sky. Thunder rolled like a drum. The baby cried again, weak but alive. It gave him strength. When the wind finally began to die, the sun was dropping behind the hills. Colt's cabin was still a mile off, barely visible through the red dust. Juniper limped, sweat streaked with grit. Colt's arm ached from holding the child close, but he didn't let go. He reached the edge of the dry creek bed just as darkness fell. Coyotes howled somewhere behind him. Every instinct screamed to keep moving. He crossed a gully and saw the outline of his cabin against the dying light. One room of cracked timbers, a half-rotten roof, a corral half empty of hope. Juniper stumbled the last few yards before collapsing at the gate. Colt slid off, boots hitting the dirt hard. He was shaking. His body wanted to fall. But the baby made a soft noise, and that was enough. He kicked open the cabin door, stumbled inside. The place smelled of old leather, smoke, and dust. He set the baby on his cot, struck a match, and lit the lantern. The room glowed dim yellow, shadows crawling up the walls. He found a tin cup, poured water from the barrel. Using a rag, he dripped it between the baby's lips. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a faint swallow, a breath, another. Colt exhaled hard, his shoulders slumping. "That's it," he whispered. "You fight, little one. You damn well fight." He tore strips from a clean shirt to wrap the baby, set a small fire, and warmed milk in a pot. He had no clue what he was doing, just old memory and blind hope. Outside, the storm rumbled away into silence. Hours passed. The baby slept, curled beside the fire in Colt's old blanket. He sat nearby, boots off, staring into the flames. The child's tiny chest rose and fell, steady now. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion heavy, but his mind wouldn't rest. Every flicker of firelight pulled ghosts from his memory. The small grave behind the church in Abilene, the blood on the bed sheets, his wife's last breath. He'd buried her with their son, both taken before dawn. After that, he left the town, the church, the world. Rode west and didn't stop. He looked at the baby again, and something in his chest twisted hard. "You ain't mine," he said softly, "but I reckon you belong to somebody who's hootin' worse than me." He didn't know if anyone was coming back for it, or if they were already dead. The desert didn't spare much. But the thought of leaving it out there, he couldn't. He rose, paced the floor restless. Every creak, it sounded too loud. He checked the window, just darkness and the lowest of the wind. He poured himself a half shot of whiskey and drank it slow. The baby stirred, small whimpers breaking the quiet. Colt moved closer, brushing its cheek with a rough finger. It calmed. His throat tightened. "You remind me." He stopped, unable to finish. He looked around his cabin, the half-built shelves, the dust, the lonely tools. He realized how empty it all was. He'd spent years running from life, and now here it was, crying in his bed. The fire popped, a spark shooting up the chimney. Outside, an owl called once. Colt leaned back, whispering more to himself than to God. "If she's out there, Lord, give her peace. If she ain't, give me the strength to do right by this one." He dozed off in the chair, the rifle leaning against his knee, the baby safe beside the fire. When dawn came, the world was pale and quiet. Dust hung in the air like ghosts of the night before. Colt woke to the sound of breathing, not his own. For a heartbeat, he thought it was the baby. Then he heard it. Soft steps outside the window. He froze, listening. The sound of a boot against wood. A faint shadow moved across the thin curtain. His hand went to his rifle. Whoever it was had come quiet. Too quiet. He rose slowly, silent as the wind itself, eyes sharp, heart steady. The baby slept on, unaware of the danger waiting just beyond the door. Colt's jaw tightened. The desert had a way of giving and taking the same breath, and he had a feeling that whatever came next was about to test how far one man's mercy could stretch. And when the faint creak of the porch echoed again, he knew this story wasn't done, not by a long shot. The morning was quiet except for the low crackle of the fire and the steady breath of the infant wrapped in Colt's old wool blanket. He'd been outside mending the corral fence when it happened, the sound of footsteps crunching through the sand. Slow, deliberate. Then came the click of a hammer being drawn back. "Don't move." The voice was low, sharp, and cold as creek water. Colt froze mid-step, one hand still on the fence post. The air went still around him. He turned slowly. A woman stood 20 paces away, her shadow stretching long in the pale sun. She wore a dust-covered coat, the hem torn and blood-stained. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed her face, but a rifle aimed at his chest told him plenty. Her eyes were dark, fierce, rimmed red from sleepless nights and desert wind. She couldn't have been older than 28, though the grit of her stare made her seem twice that. "Where is he?" she demanded. Colt raised a brow. Where's who? My baby. His gut dropped. He didn't move, didn't blink. Slowly, he pointed toward the cabin. Inside. She took a step closer, rifle steady. If you've hurt him, Colt cut her off, calm but firm. He's alive. You want to see him, lower that gun. Her lip trembled, not from weakness, but from the storm behind her eyes. For a moment, the mask cracked. She looked like a woman who'd been to hell and barely found her way back. Then she steadied again. Inside, she ordered. Colt nodded, leading her toward the door. Inside, the baby stirred, as if sensing her presence. She hesitated at the threshold, shoulders tight. Then she stepped in. Her gaze locked on the child immediately. She dropped the rifle and fell to her knees beside the cot, hands trembling as she touched the baby's cheek. Oh, God! Oh, my boy! Colt stood near the wall, silent. He watched her, the way her hands shook, not from fear, but from too much love breaking free all at once. After a long moment, she turned toward him, eyes still wet. You found him? He nodded. Yesterday morning, out past the North Ridge. Her jaw clenched. I was ambushed. Men took my horse, my canteen. I ran for miles before I passed out. When I came to, he was gone. She swallowed hard, looking at the floor. I thought they left him to die. Colt's voice was soft. You're lucky I was dumb enough to check. Her eyes flicked up to his. Lucky, she echoed, though her tone carried a blade's edge. Or maybe he's lucky you ain't one of them. He met her stare evenly. Maybe. She looked back to the baby. His name's Eli, she whispered. He's 5 months old. Colt nodded, the name sitting heavy in the air between them. Name's Colt Avery. You can rest here if you're needing it. Her shoulders eased, but not much. I'll stay till sundown. Then we move. You'll go nowhere with that wound. He nodded toward her left side where the coat was stained dark. You're bleeding through. She glanced down, grimaced. It's not bad. It's bad enough. Colt stepped forward. Sit. I'll get the bandages. For a moment, pride and pain battled behind her eyes. Then, with a weary exhale, she lowered herself into the chair by the fire. Colt cleaned the wound as best he could. The bullet had grazed her ribs, angry red, but not deep. She bit down hard on a strip of leather as he pressed the cloth against it. What's your name? He asked. Marisol, she said through clenched teeth. Marisol Vega. Mexican? Apache by blood, Mexican by border. He nodded, dabbing gently. You're a long way from home. Home's wherever they ain't hunting me. He paused. Who's they? She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was bitter as ash. Traders. White men. They came to our village near San Xavier. Promised food, peace, trade. But they lied. Took what they wanted. Burned what was left. Colt's hand slowed. He knew the kind of men she meant. He'd seen them, men who wore smiles when they robbed graves. They took me, she said flatly, and when they were done, they sold me. The words hung there, hard and heavy. Colt didn't speak. There wasn't anything worth saying. I escaped 3 days ago, she went on. Eli was with me. I thought we'd made it, but they caught our trail. Shot at us. I ran. He was crying. I tried to quiet him. I tripped. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. By the time I crawled back, he was gone. Colt finished wrapping the bandage and tied it off. You did what you could. She looked at him, hollow-eyed. You don't understand. I left him. He met her gaze. And you came back with a gun. That's more than most would have done. Something softened in her expression, just slightly. Why'd you save him? He didn't answer right away. He poured her a cup of water, handed it over, and finally said, Because I buried enough children for one lifetime. The room went quiet. Only the fire spoke, crackling low. After a while, Marisol said softly, Thank you. Colt gave a small nod, staring into the flames. Don't thank me yet. Those men who took your horse, they won't stop hunting. Her eyes hardened again. Then let them come. Colt almost smiled. You shoot as good as you talk. Better. Outside, a crow cawed, sharp and distant. The baby stirred, cooing softly. Marisol picked him up, her movements tender, protective. Colt watched her, something unspoken forming in his chest. She looked down at Eli and said, "He doesn't cry much. Not anymore." Colt's brow furrowed. Babies cry to remind the world they're alive. He's got reason enough. Her lips trembled at that, and she pressed a kiss to the child's forehead. Then I'll remind him. By late afternoon, the sky turned the color of cooled iron. Colt stood by the window, squinting across the desert. The air had that heavy stillness that came before bad things. Marisol slept, the baby in her arms, both wrapped in Colt's old blanket. He'd stepped outside earlier, checked for tracks, and found them, 3 sets of boot prints coming from the west. Now, as the sun sank low, he heard horses. Distant, slow, careful. He grabbed his rifle and kicked the door shut softly. Marisol stirred awake instantly, instincts sharp. "What is it?" "Riders. 3 of 'em." Her face hardened. She rose, holding Eli close. "They found us." "Could be passers-by." "No," she said, eyes burning with certainty. "They're hunters." Colt peered through the crack in the shutter. Dust plumes rose on the horizon. 3 dark figures moving steady. He cursed under his breath. "Take the baby," he said, nodding toward the back. "There's a cellar under the floorboards." She shook her head. "I won't hide." "You ain't hiding. You're keeping him safe." I said no. Colt turned, temper flaring just enough to cut through the fear. "You want him to live. You listen to me. I'll handle them." She looked at him a long moment, then finally nodded. "If you die, I'll finish it." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." She lifted the floorboard, slipped down into the dark with the baby in her arms. Colt covered the opening with a rug, then turned toward the door. The sound of hooves drew closer. The first rider came into view, a tall man in a duster coat, pale hair slicked back, eyes like ice. He was flanked by 2 others, rough and armed. Colt stepped onto the porch, rifle loose but ready. "Evening." The leader smiled thinly. "Evening, friend. You seen a woman pass this way? Apache girl. Traveling light, maybe carrying something she shouldn't?" Colt's face stayed unreadable. "Can't say I have." "Funny," the man said, glancing at the cabin. "We've been following tracks leading right here." Colt's thumb brushed the rifle's hammer. Tracks don't always tell truth. The man chuckled. "Neither do men." He nodded to one of his men, who dismounted and started walking toward the porch. Colt didn't move. "You best turn around." The man kept coming, smirking. "Or what?" Colt fired once. The shot cracked the air, echoing off the hills. The man dropped like a sack, rifle tumbling from his hands. The others froze. The leader's smile vanished. "You just made a mistake, friend." Colt racked another round. "Ain't the first." Gunfire erupted. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls. Splinters flying. Colt ducked behind a post, firing back in bursts. One bullet caught the second rider in the leg. He screamed, fell. The leader retreated behind his horse, shouting orders. Inside, Marisol crouched in the cellar, rocking Eli, whispering prayers through gritted teeth. The baby whimpered once, but she held him close, her free hand gripping the revolver she'd taken from Colt's shelf. Outside, the shootout roared through the dusk. Colt reloaded, blood dripping from a cut on his arm. He glanced toward the cabin. A flicker of movement near the side window caught his eye. The leader was flanking. Colt turned, ready? But before he could fire, a shot rang from inside. Loud, precise. The leader stumbled, clutching his shoulder, rifle falling from his grasp. Marisol stood in the window, smoke curling from the barrel of her gun. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the wind. The wounded outlaw staggered backward, eyes wide with disbelief, then fell face first into the dirt. Colt stared, chest heaving. Then he looked toward her, and their eyes met through the smoke. For a long moment, nothing moved, just the sound of Eli's soft cry breaking the quiet. Colt lowered his rifle. "Guess you don't, miss," he said softly. Marisol's voice trembled with exhaustion, but her aim stayed steady. "Told you I was better." He couldn't help it. He smiled. As the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the desert in shadow, Colt stepped off the porch. The men were down, for now, but he knew this wasn't over. There'd be more. He looked back toward the cabin. Marisol was still there, holding the baby close, smoke curling around her silhouette. For the first time, Colt realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about choosing who you stood with when the desert came to take everything. And tonight, he knew where he stood. The night after the gunfight was too quiet. Even the coyotes stayed silent, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Colt sat on the porch, rifle across his knees, watching the horizon where 3 bodies lay half buried in the sand. The air smelled of blood and smoke, and his hands still shook from the fight, though he'd never admit it aloud. Inside, Marisol cleaned the floor with slow, deliberate movements, as if scrubbing away the memory of death. Eli slept beside the hearth, bundled tight. The light from the fire traced the outline of her face, tired, sharp, beautiful in its defiance. Colt couldn't stop glancing her way, though he pretended otherwise. "You think they'll come back?" she asked without looking up. He exhaled through his nose. "Men like that always got friends. Word'll spread by morning. Then we can't stay." Colt's voice hardened. "You can't run forever. Desert will take you before they do." She stood, brushing dust from her palms. "You think I don't know that? I've been running since I was 16. He turned toward her. "Ain't saying you're weak. I'm saying you deserve a place that don't keep chasing ghosts." Her eyes met his. "And where's that, Colt? Where do women like me belong?" He didn't answer. The question hit too close. He'd built his own prison long ago. These walls, this land, this silence. He recognized the same kind of exile in her. Marisol looked away first, her voice softening. "You could come with us. You know the land. You could keep Eli safe." He smiled, but it was thin. "Ain't the kind of man who deserves a fresh start." She stepped closer, the firelight glinting in her eyes. "You found a dying child in the desert and gave him life. If that don't make you a better man, what does?" Colt looked away, throat tight. "I don't do good things. I just fix what I can't walk past." Outside, a faint wind swept across the plain, whispering through the broken boards of corral. He listened, every sense sharpened. Something wasn't right. He stood fast, hand to his rifle. "Get the baby. Now." Marisol froze, eyes wide. "You hear something?" Horse steps, far side of the ridge. She moved quick, scooping Eli into her arms. Colt stepped off the porch, eyes scanning the darkness. The moon hung pale over the dunes, painting faint shadows. Then he saw them, 4 riders cresting the ridge, torches in hand. "Hell," he muttered, "they brought more." He turned back to the cabin. "Go through the creek bed east of here. Take Juniper. Keep the shadows. Don't stop till you reach the canyon pass. And you?" "I'll keep him busy." She gripped his arm. "Colt." "Do it." He snapped, voice rough. Then softer, "Please." Her hand lingered on his sleeve for a heartbeat, something unspoken between them. Then she nodded and slipped out the back, vanishing into the desert dark with Eli against her chest. Colt took one last look toward the ridge, then toward the empty doorway where she'd stood. He breathed deep, chambered around, and whispered to the wind, "Come on, you bastards. Let's finish it." They came just after midnight. 4 riders, drunk on vengeance and dust. Colt was ready. He doused the sand around the porch with lamp oil, laid a trail back toward the shed. When the first man rode close enough, Colt fired. The torch dropped, flames leaping up the oil-soaked ground. The desert lit like dawn. The men shouted, scattering as fire roared through the dry brush. Colt ducked behind the porch rail, firing steady, each shot deliberate. 1 rider fell. Another fled screaming, his coat ablaze. A bullet slammed into the wall behind Colt, splintering the post. He dove for cover, rolling behind the trough, rifle clutched tight. The air filled with the stench of burning wood and gunpowder. Then came a voice, smooth, cold, familiar. Avery. Colt froze. That voice. He hadn't heard it in years. Thought you were dead, Clay, Colt shouted back. The man laughed, stepping into the firelight. His face was older, crueler, but Colt would have known those snake eyes anywhere. Clay Danner, once his partner in cattle drives. Now the kind of man who sold people like livestock. Couldn't stay dead without saying hello, Clay drawled, rifle hanging easy in his hands. You always did have a soft heart for strays. Should have known you'd find her. Colt's jaw clenched. You were with them. I own them, Clay said proudly. And the woman you're protecting? She cost me good money. So why don't you make it easy and hand her over? Colt stepped from behind the trough, gun raised. Ain't happening. Clay grinned. Then let's see if you still shoot straight. They fired at the same time. Clay's bullet grazed Colt's shoulder. Colt shot tore through Clay's coat, spinning him sideways. The two men moved through firelight like ghosts of another life, one born of greed, the other of guilt. The flames roared higher, catching the cabin roof. Colt ducked inside for cover, smoke thickening fast. He coughed, eyes burning. The baby's blanket still lay by the hearth. He grabbed it without thinking, clutching it like a talisman. Footsteps creaked behind him. Clay's voice slithered through the smoke. Always cleaning up after other men's sins, huh, Colt? Tell me, did that dead wife of yours ever forgive you? Colt's blood froze. Don't speak her name. She begged you to leave that run, and you went anyway. Your boy died for your pride. Colt turned fast, rage cutting through the smoke. You weren't there. Clay smirked. No, but I heard her scream. Colt fired. The bullet hit Clay square in the chest. The man staggered back, eyes wide, disbelief etched in every line. You finally did something right. He dropped hard, dead before he hit the floor. The flames climbed higher. The cabin crackled, timbers moaning as the roof sagged. Colt staggered toward the door, clutching his bleeding arm, smoke clawing his lungs. He stumbled outside into the burning night. The last rider was gone, either dead or running. The land around him glowed orange, shadows writhing like ghosts. Colt collapsed to one knee, coughing hard. His eyes found the horizon, the east ridge where Marisol had gone. He rose, swaying, and began to walk, one step at a time through the burning sand. By dawn, the fire was nothing but ash behind him. He reached the canyon pass, his shirt torn, blood dry black across his sleeve. The wind carried faint sounds, soft, rhythmic. A horse. Then he saw her. Marisol sat by the rocks, Eli in her arms, Juniper standing behind her. She looked up, eyes widening when she saw him. He must have looked half dead, but she ran to him anyway. He caught her against him, breath ragged. For a long moment, they said nothing, just the sound of her heartbeat against his chest. You're bleeding, she whispered. I've had worse. She looked up, eyes wet. You killed them? He nodded. All but one. He'll tell the others to stay clear. She studied him, as if seeing something new. You could have run. You could have saved yourself. Colt smiled faintly. I did. They sat in the sand as the sun climbed higher, Eli stirring between them. Colt reached out, touched the baby's tiny hand. The warmth of that small life ran through him like grace. What you do now? Marisol asked quietly. He looked east toward the empty horizon. Guess I'll follow the sunrise. Maybe build something new. Maybe help you get where you're headed. You'd come with us? He nodded. If you'll have me. Marisol smiled softly. Then we'll ride together. For the first time in years, Colt felt something that wasn't guilt or emptiness. It was light, fragile, uncertain, but real. The wind shifted, carrying away the scent of smoke. The desert was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel dead. Marisol rose, holding Eli close. Colt followed, the morning sun casting long shadows across the canyon floor. They walked side by side, no words left to say. Behind them, the cabin was gone, ashes scattered to the wind. Ahead lay the unknown, wild and open as forgiveness itself. And somewhere deep inside, Colt Avery, the man who once rode alone through fire, finally felt what it meant to be saved. He glanced down at the baby, smiling faintly. "You sure picked one hell of a family, kid." Marisol laughed softly, and for the first time, the sound didn't echo, it belonged. They mounted Juniper together and turned east toward the rising light. The desert had tested them, burned them, broken them, but it had also bound them. In a land where mercy was rare, they had found it in each other, and as they rode away from the ruins, the wind carried only one truth worth keeping. Sometimes the frontier doesn't kill what's good. It just makes it earn its right to live.